60% of ticket buyers at Coachella this year used Buy Now, Pay Later to finance their experience. People are financing $15 burritos in 4 interest-free installments. We've gone from layaway for fridges to microloans for lunch. So, how did digital marketing, glided buttons, and festival hype normalize borrowing money for a taco? And why, despite millions of users, does almost nobody warn you what's really going on? Today, we're dropping one simple truth bomb. BNPL is just payday lending in prettier clothes. But first, how did we get here? Back in 2019, Buy Now, Pay Later was a niche financing option. It accounted for just $2 billion in U.S. loans. By 2021, that number exploded to $24.2 billion, with 180 million loans issued. By 2025, it's projected to hit $122 billion in the U.S. alone. So, what happened? First, the pandemic. E-commerce surged over 50% during lockdowns, and BNPL became the frictionless way to afford big-ticket items without upfront pain. Second, social media. Influencer culture and lifestyle pressure made BNPL feel like the gateway to luxury. $400 sneakers didn't seem outrageous when split into 4 payments. And third, financial literacy. About 70% of Gen Z's BNPL purchases are under $100. That's not budgeting, that's borrowing for impulse buys. And that's how BNPL grew from a niche perk to an everyday credit pipeline. But BNPL didn't just explode because of the timing. It's how the entire payment structure rewires our brain. Picture this. You're at checkout, and 2 buttons appear. One says, pay $100. The other says, pay $25 and the rest later. Same price, same product, but somehow that second button just feels easier, lighter. That's not a coincidence. It's loss aversion in action. Our brains are wired to avoid pain, especially financial pain. Paying $100 all at once feels like a gut punch. Split it into 4 $25 payments, and that emotional sting all but disappears. Then there's temporal discounting. Our tendency to value the present over the future. You convince yourself, future me can handle the rest of this payment, even if future you is already stretched thin. And here's the part that's engineered. Most BNPL platforms don't just offer installment plans. They make them the default. It works. Harvard Business Review looked at 275,000 users and found that BNPL users spend 10% more per order and bought more often, especially among lower-income shoppers who'd previously avoided larger purchases. Afterpay says average cart sizes increase 30 to 40% when BNPL is available. So, BNPL isn't just softening the price, it is rewiring the customer. So, who's actually clicking Pay in 4? Turns out, it's mostly young people. Nearly 28% of BNPL users are between 18 and 24. They're students, first jobbers, people still figuring out how money works. And that's the point. BNPL companies aren't running ads on finance podcasts. They're targeting TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Influencer shoutouts, bright checkout buttons, seamless taps. It's not just marketing, it's psychological profiling. Social media floods younger users with aspirational lifestyles. BNPL slides in as the cheat code. Want it now? Split it, no interest. And it's not just Gen Z. BNPL is also heavily used by low-income and underbanked communities. People looking for a lifestyle upgrade but who can't afford to have a credit card, or perhaps don't have the credit score to get one. These companies are offering credit to the people who are the most vulnerable and the least equipped to climb out. Now, let's pull back the curtain a bit and talk about how that shiny Pay in 4 button helps BNPL companies make money. Every time you use BNPL, the merchant pays a fee. Credit cards usually charge 1 to 3%. But BNPL services can go to anywhere from 3% to 8% per sale. Retailers, as usual, pass it on, raising prices across the board. So even if you pay in full in cash on time, you're still helping subsidize someone else's installment plan. In fact, Afterpay says 87% of its revenue comes from merchant fees. Late payment penalties are just the cherry on top. Roughly 10% of users miss a payment each year, and those fees account for just 7% of BNPL revenue. Then there's Klarna. In 2024, 57% of its revenue came from merchant fees, but the rest came from subscriptions, nudging fees, interest, and, yes, selling your behavioral data to advertisers. But here's where it gets even worse. Some BNPL providers have started bundling your installment plans into financial instruments sold to hedge funds. Remember those mortgage bonds that led to the 2008 crisis? So, maybe you're thinking, okay, but isn't it just a fancier credit card? Unfortunately, no. BNPL is worse. Credit cards have checks. They scrutinize your history. They place limits based on income or past behavior. BNPL has none of it. That makes approval effortless, but it also removes the safety net. This is what makes BNPL so addictive. You're not borrowing $1,000 in one go. You're just paying $250 now, then $250 later, and again and again. There's no credit limit stopping you. No real-time alerts from a bank flagging excessive spending. So what happens? People stack loans across different apps. Klarna here, Afterpay here, Zip or Affirm in another tab. And those payments, they overlap. A pair of sneakers, a blender, concert tickets, takeout, all bought weeks apart, all coming due at once. That's how someone ends up owing $350 in installments on a Monday they didn't plan for. And here's where it gets real. 69% of BNPL users already carry credit card debt. That overlap is dangerous because now you're juggling revolving interest on one side and time-based payments on the other. And let's not forget, credit cards have built-in protections. You can dispute charges, pause interest during fraud, or leverage consumer laws. Not so for BNPL. Here's the thing nobody really talks about. BNPL is becoming less like a loan and more like a subscription. It doesn't feel like traditional debt. It feels like a soft commitment. Just $19.99 every 2 weeks for shoes, headphones, skincare. Not a big deal, right? But these little payments start stacking, just like Netflix or Spotify. One plan ends, another begins. And before you know it, your calendar isn't filled with events. It's filled with payment due dates. A 2023 CFPB report revealed that over 10% of BNPL users were juggling 5 or more concurrent payment plans. That's 5 different companies pulling from your account, each with its own billing cycle and due date. And this isn't an accident. BNPL apps are intentionally designed to normalize recurring payments. Klarna even offers Klarna Plus, a $7.99 a month subscription that promises perks and deals, effectively turning debt into a lifestyle product. This is a philosophical shift in how we interact with money. Debt used to come with weight. Now it's disguised as convenience. For years, BNPL slipped through a regulatory gray area. It wasn't technically a loan, it wasn't a credit card, so it wasn't treated like either. But as adoption has surged, regulators have started to take notice. In 2022, the US CFPB investigated major BNPL providers, Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, and others. The concern? Millions of people were taking on invisible debt without the protections that usually come with it. No consistent disclosures, no guaranteed chargeback rights, no clear reporting to credit bureaus. That's changing. As of 2025, FICO began factoring some BNPL loans into credit scores, especially long-term ones. So missing a $45 payment? It might quietly hurt your chance at a car loan later. The CFPB also flagged manipulative UX, pre-selected options, friendly nudges, and confusing repayment timelines. These aren't accidents. they're engineered. Now regulators are pushing for real rules, standardized disclosures, data safeguards, and limits on fees. And frankly, it's long overdue. But the fact is, regulation or none, this entire business model is starting to crack. Take Australia, one of the earliest BNPL hotspots. In 2023, a major player called OpenPay went into receivership. This wasn't a small startup. It partnered with giants like Woolworths and Bunnings and had just posted record usage numbers. But it was losing money fast. They owed over 66 million Australian dollars and had just 1.2 million in the bank. That's not a runaway. That's a cliff. The company shut down overnight, leaving customers mid-payment and retailers in the lurch. It didn't stop there. In 2024, Laybuy, a BNPL provider with 500,000 users, collapsed too. They tried to sell. No one bought. Lights out. Why? Because BNPL models are fragile. They rely on merchant fees 2 to 3 times higher than credit cards. That only works if people keep spending and default rates stay low. But rising interest rates, tighter wallets, and missed payments break that balance. OpenPay lost nearly 42 million Australian dollars in 6 months. Klarna's valuation dropped from $45 billion to $6.7 billion. Affirm stock? Down over 80%. The signs are clear. Frictionless debt doesn't survive a friction-filled economy. So, here we are. A decade ago, payday loans were the villain. Now we just gave them a makeover, wrapped them in pastel colors, and put them in your pocket. Buy now, pay later isn't evil by design, but it's ended up preying on those exact people it was supposed to serve. If you're reaching for BNPL to make ends meet, the problem isn't your budgeting skills. It's that the financial system is broken, and these apps are cashing in on the cracks. So if this made you pause, even for a second, good. That pause might save you from a pile of invisible debt. If you learned something today, hit like. If you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe.